It's Sunday morning. Had an opportunity to sleep on this move, think about it a little more, hit the gym, hit the weights, think about it a little more, all of the potential implications of the Luis Arraez deal. And if you've watched any of my videos, you know I like to use a lot of numbers. I think I used like 20 of them just consecutively last night in my 10 minutes of unfiltered, completely unfiltered stream of consciousness dialogue. And who better, if I'm talking numbers, to bring in someone that is infinitely smarter than me? And not just that, literally created one of the stats that I reference all the time. Eno Sarris from The Athletic. Welcome to the show,
Hey,
man.
thanks for having me on, Justice. Good to see you.
We've got a very interesting player to talk about. Obviously, Luis Arraez, 1 year, $12 million deal to join the San Francisco Giants, become their starting second baseman. And honestly, before getting into any of the specifics, before getting into the batting, before getting into the defense, I kind of just want to start there. When you look at the pool of available free agents, and I'm talking about like the top end of the pool, I'm not talking about the guys that are getting like $1 million deals. When you look at like the high profile guys of this year's free agent class, I think it's safe to say, like, without a doubt, like Luis Arraez was the singular most polarizing player because you had one end of the spectrum was like, this is the greatest contact hitter alive. This is like shades of Tony Gwynn. And then you have like a completely other camp where it's like, this dude is just bad. And I think the answer is just kind of in between there somewhere. I don't think it's all good, all bad. It's like, it's not black, it's not white. There's a lot of gray when it comes to
Well, we
Luis
got we got a little
Arraez.
bit of a market answer, I think. 1 and 12 suggests that he's not the next Tony Gwynn. I think it also, it actually comes back around because, it's a deal that looks a lot like somebody that Giants might be familiar with. Mike Yastrzemski got, 2 and 23. So like there's some similarities there in the deals they got. And so if you just want to put it up against, oh, should they have brought him back, or what else could they have done in that $10 million range? They could have, maybe gone all the way up to Jorge Polanco, who got 2 and 40 from the Mets. So when you put him up against what was there at second base in the market, I'm okay with it actually. I thought, sometimes when something is so denigrated by the analysts, and so like sometimes it's such a distressed asset that, like, yeah, 1 year 12, that part doesn't bother me. The contract doesn't bother me. The fit is another story, and we can talk about that. The contract and what he represents, I think, was actually, they might have gotten a little bit of, underrated aspect to it, like in terms of he will probably be worth a little bit more than $12 million, and they didn't have to pay any prospects like Donovan would have cost. They didn't have to go to big money like Bo Bichette to cover second base. So it's an okay deal, I think.
Yeah, to the element of the contract, there's obviously been some reports that Arraez turned down a couple potential multi-year deals because he did want to play second base. And speaking to Jorge Polanco, him and Arraez kind of having this weird, like Polanco signing with the Mets to go from second base to first base, and Arraez is kind of doing the opposite there. But I think the one when we're breaking down Arraez, and let's get into the fit, not the the financial
Mm.
aspect of things. I think the easiest thing that we can kind of the box that we can just check off before getting into the more complicated aspect with the rise is the defense and the base running. I don't know if we have to talk a ton about this, but I think it's best to just get this out the way. Arraez, the last time he was a full-time defensive second baseman was in 2023. Since 2019, he's his negative 60 outs above average, both at any position he's played, is the fewest among all defenders. Second base in particular, I want to say it's negative 35, I believe. So, and then he did have a career high 11 steals last year, but it's 25th percentile sprint speed last year. So he's not going to get a ton as far as the fielding and as far as the base running. And when you have Rafael Devers too to consider on the right side of that infield, it might be a bit rough defensively, first base, especially when you consider that last year the Giants were third in ground ball rate, and their best pitcher is like the premier ground ball guy in all of
Logan
baseball.
Webb had the most ground balls to second base in baseball last year.
Oh, we could end it right there. That's exactly why I brought you on. We could end it right there. That's exactly why I brought you on.
No, it's so bad. Yeah, and the base running, when you look at just the steals, you say, "Oh, he's got some legs," and you look at the body type, and you think, "Oh yeah, he must be fast." But he's not very fast, like you pointed out. And when you just sum up the base running value, where you take like, oh, did he take the extra base? Did he get caught stealing? He's bottom quartile. Like he's a bottom third of the league, bottom fourth of the league in terms of base running. So yeah, he gives a lot of value back on the base pass and with the glove. I think it's going to be fascinating. I think one of the best cases of a player overperforming what people thought of him defensively that I've ever seen, and I saw it up close, was Marcus Semien after the trade from the White Sox, where the White Sox said this guy is not a shortstop. We're trading him like a future role player at second base. And Ron Washington was there working with Marcus Semien. He's got the whole like bunch of different things that he can do defensively, all the different little gloves, and I expect to see a justice story on all the different like flat gloves and little gloves and all the work that Ron Washington's going to have to do on that right side. It's going to be prodigious. The other thing that I do like is that Casey Schmidt is a really good defender.
Yes.
So I expect to see, Arraez and maybe even Devers leaving games early.
I wouldn't.
If
Yeah.
you get 3-run, 4-run lead, you might rather have Casey Schmidt out there, protecting the lead at first or at second. So
Yeah. To the Ron Washington point, between Arraez and Rafael Devers
and
and even
Bryce
Bryce
Elder.
Eldridge, he is whatever the Giants are paying him, he is going to have to earn every single cent of what he's earning. And to the Casey Schmidt point, I think one of the implications here, we're kind of getting into the not necessarily the roster fit necessarily, but I think one of the interesting implications here is what do they do with Schmidt? Because you have a guy who was, on pace for, 20 homers over 162, had to basically, he had played second base before, but this was his first full excursion to second base. And when you kind of see what he's done at third base, you can see a path where this is an above average or just at least average defender at second base. But if they do keep him, I wouldn't be shocked if we see a lot of late game situations where it's, seventh, eighth, ninth inning, like Casey Schmidt is coming in defensively for
I
Arraez
think,
or Devers.
really good teams and teams that want to compete create this redundancy usually. We saw it with the Dodgers with Chris Taylor forever, and then Tommy Edman most recently. The teams that have the ability. This is one of the things you can do when you have some financial muscle. The way that you can flex that muscle is by building depth on your team. So it might even make sense for them to still sign one more sort of corner outfield DH type to make it so that Eldridge doesn't have to come up in the big leagues, right? Create that safety measure for if maybe Eldridge doesn't look ready in spring, that sort of deal. So that's the type of thing you can do with money, and I think between the eventual sort of Chapman. I'm not saying that Chapman's injured every year, but just, Chapman injury, Devers injury. I think Schmidt can probably even go to the outfield if I really respect his glove, and he's the backup shortstop. So anytime Adames needs to blow, so I hope they don't trade Schmidt because I think he's still going to be really important to this team.
And even if they do trade Schmidt, you have Christian Koss, who I'm not saying I saw this tweet last night, and I'm not saying B War is the end all be all, but he actually did have more WAR than Luis Arraez. It was like 1.9 to 1.2. But Christian Koss played all over the field last year, looked really well. I think he even kind of was experimenting with some outfield too in a pinch. You also have Tyler Fitzgerald, who, despite all of his struggles with the bat, did look really good at second base. So even if they do trade Schmidt, they have a couple different guys that might be able to slot in to that potential super utility role. Any other thoughts on kind of the defense? Actually, there is one more point because you did mention Bryce Eldridge, and this might kind of bleed in to the batting element here. I do kind of wonder if in adding a rise and having, just another very respectable bat, if this might in a really weird way increase Eldridge's chance of making the opening day roster because there are so like when you look at this lineup, there's so many, guys that like with Eldridge, the pressure as far as, being I'm not saying he'd be the savior necessarily, but the weight of expectations because you have Arraez, even with Bader, and then you get Devers, Chapman, Adames, Ramos. There's just significantly less pressure on Eldridge to produce now than there was a week ago, say. So I don't I think that's something that, whenever we talk to Posey and Manassian, well, I'm kind of curious to see what they think about. But any final thoughts on the defensive element here before jumping into the offense with the rise?
Yeah, just you know, I think it'll be a really interesting fit there. I mean, Devers didn't look it looked so terrible at the beginning, the first few games that he played at first, but I thought he looked better after a while. And theoretically, a guy, even if he's not that great at third, should be pretty good at first, at least in his athletic prime. So I guess I have a little bit more hope for Devers to be defensively neutral this year than for Arraez, who's a little bit older and has sort of established that he's like a team has already decided that he's not their second baseman, a team that needed a second baseman. And so that's it'll be really interesting to see how that figures. I think with Elliot Ramos too, there's defensive questions out there. At least with the Harrison Bader acquisition, they pushed Ramos, Lee to the corner there and Ramos to right, and take a little bit of pressure off everybody. I think that you're right. Also, now that we're getting into the offensive fit, I'm looking at projections, and now with Arraez in the fold, you at least have six, maybe seven Giants that are projected to be above league average at the plate. And that's without Eldridge, who's projected in different places for different things because he's a prospect. But yeah, I think you might be right. If you've got 6 or 7 guys, now you're batting Eldridge eighth, and you're just saying, "Hey, just give it a ride, see what happens."
Might be the most overqualified number 8 hitter. Well, actually, I'm remembering the Dodgers exist, so it may be
Oh,
one
right.
of the more overqualified.
I'm not saying I necessarily bat him eight. I mean, even seven or something, but just
Yeah.
like, but not like, oh, we're putting you third, and you have to be like our three hitter now. You know?
Yeah, it's definitely a lot more or a lot less pressure when it comes to Eldridge. And again, whether or not he's gonna be on the third base line on March 25th on opening night, time will tell. I mentioned this in a video with Shayna earlier, the possibility of seeing Marco Luciano with the Yankees on opening day. That's not happening. He got DFA'd.
He
That
is in DFA hell right now. I feel so badly for players like that. He's been picked up and
Yeah.
dropped like 5 times this offseason. It's somebody who's like at least somewhat appealing because he's young, but he's got all these flaws that's just make him, a last guy on a 40-man roster, basically.
Yeah, say what you will about Luciano as a player. It's just, when you think about the human element, it does suck to see a guy go from San Francisco to Pittsburgh to Baltimore to New York without ever playing a
A
single
single
game.
game.
So, getting into the again, for those of you who may have seen the video I did last night, you could tell it was just like 30,000 different thoughts entering my head at one time. I think if you've ever seen Arraez's baseball savant page, I think you would understand why. It is just such a fascinating profile because Arraez is a man of extremes when it's come to his major league career, especially the last 2 years. He has a 317 batting average. That's the highest batting average among all active players. 2023, like legitimately for a period of time, was flirting with being the first guy to hit 400 since Ted Williams had like a 390 batting average going into the month of July. You don't fake that. The bat to ball skills are elite. Nobody does better than him. Nobody strikes out in the modern game less than him. It's like it was 3.1% of the time last year, 6.1% of the time in his entire career. And if he's a 3-time batting champion, 3-time All-Star, 2-time Silver Slugger, and if I just gave you all of that, you're like, "Oh my God, this is his
How'd they get him
sounds
for 12 million?
how did we get him for 12 million? This guy sounds like the Tony Gwynn cop has been made a ton. If you want to go even further to some of the throwbacks like Rod Carew, Wade Boggs, like it feels like this is like a future Hall of Famer. But then we get into the other side of things, and that side is equally as complicated because he doesn't strike out a ton. He also doesn't walk a ton. He puts the ball in play a lot. It's not for a lot of power. And if you look at some of, the underlying metrics of what he was doing last year, it was the lowest expected batting average of his career, lowest expecting slugging percentage. I think it's the lowest ex Wobacon too, if I'm remembering correctly. There's a lot of things trending down with Arraez, and it's kind of it's fascinating. I'm still equally fascinated right now as I was about 15 hours ago. It's so hard to project exactly what that's gonna be like. There's good, there's bad, there's everything in between, so I'm gonna throw it over to you. Because again, you are the man that is infinitely smarter than me when it comes to these things. Just what do you make of just Ariza's overall offensive profile? Because again, I'm gonna keep using this word. It is so fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that is nice is that the Giants had the 13th highest strikeout rate last year. And by batting average, were the 25th best batting average. So, they attacked a weakness there. He should improve both of those things a little bit. Some of those are due to the park, of course. But with he's on a team that there's a lot of sort of more patient or more slugging guys on this team. I mean, you have Chapman, who's patient with slug. You have Adames and Devers, who are a little bit more aggressive but have the high slug. You got Ramos sort of in between. So you got these more patient guys. Putting an Arraez in the middle of it might be, I like lineup diversity. I like the idea of like, ooh, we've got a guy who can move it along if we're lucky he comes up with the bases loaded and less than two outs, and then all we need is just put the ball in play. We need to run. Luis Arraez is perfect for that. And so there's definitely things that arise as well that will help this team, and I'll focus on that first. But secondly, he just isn't a modern baseball player. And when I say something like that, I'm not trying to denigrate him. And I know that it raised some, hackles with people being like, oh, the modern game sucks. And this is why. And we should love this singles hitter. But here's why he doesn't fit into the modern game. For one, outfield defense has been really dialed in over the last 5 to 10 years. In fact, outfield batting average on balls in play has just been in a free fall for the last 10 years. And the reason is those little cards that you see the outfielders have when they go out there. And those little cards tell them move 5 feet this way, move 6 feet that way, move 3 feet in, move 3 feet out for each player. And they've been very effective. As an example, Luis Arraez is played shallower in left field than any other baseball player out there right now. They're out there 270 feet out there. The average outfielder plays 290 feet out. They move 20 feet in when Arraez comes to the plate. And you
That's
see
three
Arraez
Bryce Eldridges.
yeah, right. You see Arraez like doing this thing when he gets to the plate where he's visualizing hitting it to left field. He's trying to go to left field. He's soft serving it out there, and it used to give him lots of hits. Luis Arraez's batting average to the outfield has dropped 100 points in the last 3 years. Now, let's talk about the fit in San Francisco. He's going to a middle of the road park in terms of outfield distance, not too different from Petco. I thought he would have been a great fit for Colorado, which has the biggest outfield, or even St. Louis, Detroit, these places with really big outfields. Where now, if the fielder comes in that far, there's pressure on the defense. Arraez can do different things. It's a bigger outfield to defend. However, the difference between St. Louis and Colorado's outfield and San Francisco's is 8,000 square feet. So they have way more to defend in the outfield, and he would have been a better fit in some of those places than he is in San Francisco, where it's frankly not that large to the places he wants to go. Where he wants to go to left field, it's a completely average park out there. So they can come in the 20, 25 feet and they start catching balls that used to be singles. And that's when you get the modern game comment, because we tell kids in little league, hey, hit the ball up the middle. And then they get to the big leagues and there's a guy standing up the middle, you know? And that's the modern game. Is defensive positioning has really taken some of these old school ideas that we had and put them on their head. And one of those is, hey, just go with oppo. Just serve it out there to the opposite field. You'll get a hit. Not if the defender is 250 feet out there, like standing right where balls land. So he's beginning easier to defend, and that's why his batting average is going down. That's why he's getting worse every year. That's why he only got a 1 year deal. And what I would tell him is, take some more shots, try to pull some homers, splash hit, baby. Luis Arraez splash hit. It's actually pretty important that he does something like that because it might affect how he's defended. He has to show something. And he has first percentile bat speed, but he has the shortest swing in baseball too. So he can actually, when he does hit homers, they're right down the line, and he could hit a splash hit. It could be really important for him to do that. So I just thought that taking him and putting him in these other parks might have been a better fit. But some of those teams aren't being very competitive right now. They didn't necessarily want to spend $12 million for a player like this. I get it, but somebody like Detroit, it might have made sense.
There's a lot to unpack there. You just kind of illustrated with with a lot more and better numbers than me. That it's just like there's a lot of there's things to like about him. There's things to dislike about him. To the point about the lineup variance, you also have Jung Hoo Lee to account for this as well, where he's another super high contact, low strikeout, low walk guy. Where, if you stagger these guys in a certain type of way, you might go from having like an at bat against Devers that's like 6, 7 pitches to facing Arraez, who was just like, oh, he's gonna jump on me on the first pitch, and it's like that's probably not fun to deal
Yeah,
with
you want
as a
different.
as a pitcher.
You want to create the different problems for the pitcher to solve. And I think you're right. If you stagger Rise and Lee, then maybe you get lucky more often. There's a guy who's going to put the ball in play right when you need just a ball in play.
And to the point of what you were making about, potentially pull side power, I think one of the interesting things about, going to Harrison Bader is that, thinking about potential like meat on the bone there, like a lot of his homers were to the pull side. I think 15 of the 17 homers that he had last year were to the pull side. So you're seeing that's an example right there of somebody that's optimizing the power that they have, and especially, given the constraints that Oracle Park is going to have on his offensive game, that's something that's going to be very important for him to the point with the rise. It's so hard to envision. I was talking to Warriors reporter Joseph Dykes, and he was trying to get my take on this because it's you see the batting average, the batting titles, you think, okay, this is like a really good guy. And he asked me, he said, do you think that he could be someone that walks more? Or do you think he could be someone that, tries to tap into that pull side power? And we've seen, I think, 7 years of Luis Arraez at this point. And you hate to just kind of write somebody off and say like they are what they are, but this is the profile that has gotten him to this point in his career. It's what's made him such a valuable player. But you also wonder, it's like, is that going to also be the thing that maybe puts a cap on how effective he can be after his age 29 season onward? And I am very interested to see with new hitting coach Hunter Mentz if there's any tweaks there, to what you said, maybe sacrificing a little bit of, contact as far, and even with Jung Hoo too, maybe sacrificing a little bit of the contact, maybe being, a little more selective as pitches to
The
drive.
park
But
is bigger up the middle in San Francisco, right? We have, triples alley and stuff. So if he could, that's actually in his favor. Whereas other players might say, God, I can't hit it out. What Rise could say is, maybe if I pull it a little bit more and start hitting these into triples alley, that's harder for them to defend. So if he could just go up the middle a little bit more, that you might use more of the park that's harder to defend.
I mean, thinking of since the World Baseball Classic is on the mind, like one of his defining moments was I think it's the pull side homer against David Bednar. And I get none. That's one example, but you kind of see it a little bit like if you're just watching like the clips of like him like turning on like a fastball, pulling it to the right, over the right field fence. It's like it's in there. It feels
Hmm.
like it's in there, but it does kind of feel like it's going to be it's going to be up to Arias to decide if that's something he wants to embrace. Because again, like the foundation of having the elite contact skills that he has, it's like he has a foundation that 99.9% of players can't build on. Like it's such a different. It's a matter of, am I going to be willing to optimize what I have right now at this point in time? And maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. And if he, again, that's why I'm very curious to see if the new hitting coach Hunter Mency like has any kind of things that he wants to, tweak with him. I remember, Mency a couple of years ago like had this super long Instagram thread about Jung-Hoo and like what he would do. So now they get to work together. So now it's
No,
like
I'm
up
really
to the next
excited because
speed.
Jung Hoo has more bat speed than Arraez, and I think especially another year out from the shoulder, I could see Lee tapping into that and being more of an all fields with power guy. So I'm really excited about with Lee. I think with you're talking a little bit about the sort of mentality, the approach. On Rates and Barrels, we have Jed Lowry on all the time, and he talks about intent and how important intent is to what you do. So if Arraez goes to the plate with the intent to yak it, to out of the park, he's going to have a different spray chart. He's going to think different things are going to happen. His strikeout rate will go up. He shouldn't do that every time, but selective intent might make sense. And then I think it's also interesting to take it further into the realm of think of his space in his career and where he is right now. So this is going to be one of the tougher parks he's played in, but he did play in Florida, so he's played in tough parks. But those are tough homer parks. Like, what will happen if he's got like a 240 batting average, through 2 months? Will he be more open for a big change? Is he open for a big change right now, or is he not? Does he think I'm going to just keep doing what I'm going to do, and I'm going to have a good season, and I'm going to springboard off of this? But it's really critical in his career what happens this year, right? He needs us to be successful to get a better deal. This is basically a pillow contract idea, where he's going to be good enough this year to get a multi-year deal as a second baseman, maybe going forward. So there's a lot of pressure on Arraez right now. There's a pressure on him to be good defensively. There's pressure on him to keep that batting average up, and to do it all year. And that pressure will bear out in all sorts of different ways. Could it bear out in being more open to change than he has been in the past, or will it be more like, no, I got to do what I've been doing because this year means everything. So it becomes it's a smaller deal. It's a last piece type idea where okay, well, we had a problem at second, we solved it, but he's at a crossroads in his career, and that's going to mean a lot for this team. That's why I think you got to keep Casey Schmidt, because if it really doesn't work out, you can make Arraez an overpriced pinch hitter really awesome to like bring him off the bench when I just need contact here. We win the game if this guy puts the ball in play, right? You could have that, and Casey Schmidt becomes more of the starter at second. There's a world where that happens, and the Giants keep humming along, and it's okay, and everything's fine. But that wouldn't be great for Arraez. So, I think it's going to be a really interesting year for the player.
Yeah, it's so weird to say because he turns 29 in April, and it's so weird to consider him being at a crossroads because of the resume that he had. But he is, at the end of the day, he is a one tool player. Now, that one
Yeah.
tool is like when it's humming, it's really good. But, if he's not able to hit it kind of like that 310, 320 clip, you're looking at somebody that he doesn't provide you much value elsewhere. And as he continues to get older, it's probably it's not gonna get better. It's gonna get worse. So it is really fascinating. It's gonna be a fascinating season as far as, if he's susceptible to change, if he's gonna be the same hitter that he's always been, what it's gonna look like defensively. And as far as whether he's going to make those changes, as far as whether we might see some more pull side power, again, I'm going to use a phrase that your coworker Andrew Baggerly absolutely hates. Time will tell. Time will tell. It has never failed to tell. Eno Sarris. Any final thoughts on Luis Arraez?
Well, I'm just circling him, yeah, as you've noticed, Jung-Hoo Lee, and Bryce Eldridge, I think, as the key players. Most of the other players in this will go up and go down. They'll have streaks. Adames is one of the streakier players, so we shouldn't all freak out. We should remember the second half if he starts to have another bad first half.
He is
You know,
historically slow. If he has like a
yeah,
sub 700 OPS through May,
don't
do not
worry
be
about it.
shocked. Like he'll
Yeah.
get his numbers at the end of the year.
And Devers hits the ball so hard, he hits it out of every stadium, just like he told me in that first press conference. So like a lot of these guys are really, Bader, if it's not great offensively, the reason we have him is because Lee wasn't that great defensively and takes pressure off everybody defensively. So they've built a team where most of these players are veterans in the prime of their career, that fit together decently. They fit together better than a lot of past Giants teams if you think about how many problems they've had defensively up the middle, and this team might be okay defensively for once. And then you still circle Arraez, Lee, and Eldridge as if they take another step forward as a team, those three need to be better than they've been offensively, I think, or at least as good as they've been, or up the upper reaches. And Eldridge would be that wild card where if he came in and he's as good as everybody says, that could really turn this team around. So I think that Buster Posey's done an interesting job putting this team together. Has not given away his top prospects, in these deals. And this is now his team. I think this looks a little bit more like his team. You have that tension between is this Farhan's team and is this his team? And he's putting his stamp on it more and more. Now you look at the lineup and there's, he went to make that Chapman deal happen. He went and got Devers. He signed Arraez. He signed Adames. So like, this is more his team than ever. And you know, there you go, Buster. It's your team now.
It is indeed his team more than it ever been. Whether that team's gonna break 500 for the first time since he was a player, whether or not they're gonna make the wild card, we will see over the course of the next couple of months. Where can we find your work?
You just find me in all the socials, Enosarris. Rates and Barrels is my daily podcast. We're Monday through Friday, and we're in full swing right now. It's hybrid sort of fantasy plus real life. So we got different shows on different days of the week. You could give it a couple tries, and you might like certain days better than others. But that's us, Rates and Barrels over at The Athletic.
Read the man, listen to the man. Eno Sarris, appreciate you for taking the time.
Thanks for having me.